The mattress is burning. Nils sails his boat into the fog for the last time. This book gives me peace. It teaches us to value time and share great stories. Watch now and please read it yourself.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're undertaking what really feels like the ultimate literary journey. It's a passage across a Norwegian fjord that, well, it also doubles as a 70-year retrospective on one man's very quiet life.
It does. Our source material is Frode Grytten's masterful and I think challenging, but ultimately profoundly moving novel, The Ferryman and His Wife.
And this book, it functions less like a traditional story, with a beginning, middle, and end, and more like an archaeological dig into the human heart.
That's the perfect way to put it, an archaeological dig disguised as a single day's boat route. So our mission today is to really analyze this novel as a literary masterclass. We want to do a complete breakdown of its audacious, non-linear structure, the intense depth of its character work, and of course the philosophical themes that really justify its use of magical realism.
And the hook is right there from the very first line. We meet Nils Vik, a ferryman. He's a man defined by movement, by water, on his very last day alive.
Yeah, he wakes up at 5:15 in the morning, and he is absolutely certain of his own death. There's no doubt.
And that's the central paradox, isn't it?
Yeah.
The external movement, his final sail out toward the vast open sea, is completely counteracted by this internal psychological journey.
Yeah.
He's traveling backward through time, collecting the ghosts, the regrets, and the loyalties of his entire past.
And what frames this entire deep dive, and really what sets the novel's entire structure apart, is this crucial philosophical idea that Grytten introduces early on. It's very subtle at first.
The Irish philosopher.
The Irish philosopher, exactly. We're told about his musings, this idea that the distance between forwards and backwards is truly illusory, and that the Earth is, in fact, sausage-shaped.
That idea, the sausage-shaped Earth, it's so much more than just a quirky little anecdote, isn't it? It's really the engine of the entire narrative.
It is the engine. By accepting that time is circular, that it's permeable, Grytten just strips away all the superficial suspense of if Nils will die, we know he will. Instead, he focuses the reader entirely on how he will account for the life he lived.
Which allows his past to literally climb onto his boat.
Literally. The structure itself is an argument that every moment of his life, good and bad, already exists simultaneously, and his final day is just the act of visiting them one last time.
So let's start there with that structure. Let's unpack the genre blending, because that really is the key to making this novel work, I think.
It is. We are, firmly in the camp of literary fiction. The pace is very slow, the focus is almost entirely internal, and the psychological probing is incredibly intense.
But then, as you mentioned, he starts picking up dead passengers.
Yeah.
And his dog, Luna, who died 25 years ago, she's on the boat providing this cynical, witty commentary.
It's a remarkable tightrope walk, that balance between literary fiction and magical realism.
It really is. But I have to ask, does the magical realism, especially Luna, the talking dog, does that ever threaten to undermine the brutal reality of Nils's impending death? I mean, it's such a dark conceit, a man preparing to die, and yet we have this almost whimsical animal companion.
That's a critical question, and I think Grytten's genius here lies in how he grounds that whimsicality. The magical realism is so heavily tethered to the mundane Scandinavian reality.
Right, he's not hallucinating in his sterile hospital room or something.
Not at all. He is surrounded by the specifics. The smell of diesel, the precise temperature of the rain, the dirty plates he forgot to wash, the oak hull of the MB Marta.
It's also physical.
It is. And because that setting is so gritty and physical, the surreal elements, like Luna calling other characters not quite right in the head, they feel organic to Nils's deeply troubled psyche. They function more as his externalized conscience rather than some kind of fantastical intrusion.
Luna is just the perfect foil for the silent man, isn't she?
She really is.
She's his cynical, witty companion, and she just cuts through the pretension of all the ghosts. She offers the kind of brutal honesty that Nils himself could never, ever articulate.
And I love that she died by being run over, a sort of mundane, tragic accident, yet she's the one who's guiding him through the most abstract concepts of his existence. It's a wonderful little irony.
And this whole framework, it's established immediately by the narrative premise. That opening line is just brutal in its certainty. At 5:15 in the morning, Nils Vik opened his eyes and the last day of his life began.
That certainty is the anchor point for everything that follows.
That opening establishes such a deep narrative authority. We're instantly in a third-person limited perspective, but it dissolves so quickly into the rhythm of Nils' own senses. You see that shift immediately when he describes his morning routine. It's very physical, very raw.
Absolutely. The description of his physical processes is almost clinical, but then it shifts seamlessly into the highly subjective. He's emptying his bladder, and it's described as being poured into the toilet bowl in a single long sigh.
A purely objective description.
Purely objective. But then the very next moment, he's looking at the man in the mirror, and the narrator takes on Nils's internal lamentation. He was now looking at a man who no longer knew where he was going.
That shift is just perfect.
The voice is just perfectly calibrated to reflect a man whose internal and external realities are collapsing into one final accounting.
In this sense of collapse, it's all contained within a prose style that manages to be both sparse and incredibly lyrical at the same time.
It's sparse when dealing with the routine, right? Checking for bloodstains, the efficient movements, the fact that he omits aftershave.
But the moment his gaze shifts to the exterior world or to his memories, the language just opens up. It blossoms.
The way Grytten, and we have to give enormous credit to the translator here, the way he handles the description of the water is a perfect example of this duality. Nils has to be meticulous about the technical aspects of the fjord, the depths, the tides, the motor temperature.
But he also sees its transcendent beauty. He's not just a machine operator.
Not at all. And that's where the lyricism comes in.
Yes, that lyrical description of the water changing color. The sea can be pale and grayish, or it can darken, turning black as homebrewed beer.
That's the line. That pivot from the mechanical, functional language of a ferryman to that kind of visceral, poetic observation is what gives the novel its layered depth.
He treats the exterior world, the engine, the boat, with the same care and detail that he affords Nils's deepest emotional state. It's like the fjord demands both precision and poetry from him.
I think that captures the ferryman's unique perspective entirely. He is the person perpetually moving between the functional world of the land, delivering goods, carrying commuters, and the abstract, dangerous world of the sea.
His survival depends equally on both.
Exactly. On the reliability of the mechanical, the diesel motor, and the unreliable beauty of nature, the color of the light, the temperament of the wave.
Before we move on from the style, we have to touch on the title difference, because it's a significant choice. The English translation, The Ferryman and His Wife, it immediately foregrounds the relational dynamic. It makes Marta an equal pivot point from the very beginning.
It does. It immediately sets the reader's expectation toward a profound love story, or maybe a complicated marriage retrospective, which the book certainly delivers. It guides the reader toward that idea of the warmth within the clothing, as Karjaga later describes life.
Whereas the original Norwegian, Den dagen Nils Vik, which is what the day Nils Vik died, it emphasizes the immediate finality in the narrative conceit. It's just a statement of fact, much less of an invitation.
It's colder, more direct.
It is. I think the publisher made a fascinating choice there. Perhaps to soften the existential blow for an international audience, to ensure they understand that the emotional core is the relationship, not merely the fact of his death.
And by focusing on the wife, it prepares us for the depth of Marta's character, which is absolutely essential. Nils cannot complete his final inventory without her presence, her critique, and her challenge. Their marriage is the archaeological site of the novel, and the title prepares the reader for that deep excavation.
Okay, so if the genre is the frame for this work, then the setting has to be the canvas. The Western Norwegian fjord is absolutely the third main character in this book. There's no question.
It's a presence that dictates everything: movement, economy, emotional state. It's the ultimate liminal space, isn't it?
How so?
Well, Nils is perpetually crossing. He never settles on either side. The landscape itself, the sheer mountains, the persistent rain, the unpredictable snow, the shifting quality of the light, it's never neutral.
He says that himself. He observes that even on days of apparent stillness, the fjord is never still. It rumbles and rustles. It whispers and rushes.
It's an active consciousness. It mirrors, it amplifies, and sometimes it even contradicts Nils' internal chaos.
The atmosphere then is constantly shifting. We begin in this quiet, meditative calm of a peaceful, rainy day in November, which feels like the perfect external environment for an internal reflection.
But the atmosphere can change in a heartbeat. The moment he accesses memories of high summer, or the memory of the terror of the great avalanche, the mood shifts completely. The fjord holds all these conflicting emotional states, peace and terror simultaneously.
And his boat, the MV Marta, is his mobile universe within that larger world.
It is. It's 36 feet long, made of oak, and Nils sees it as more than just a means of transport. He calls it a satellite, a moon that orbited the fjord. It's this self-contained cosmology that allows him to control a small, predictable space in an otherwise unpredictable environment.
The comfort he gets from the mechanics of the boat speaks volumes about his psychological need for routine and control, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. The engine noise, that constant knocking and thudding, he calls it the most comforting sound in all the world.
It's his reliable heartbeat, the rhythm of his loyalty.
And when everything else in his life has dissolved, his marriage via Marta's stroke, his livelihood because of the bridge, his relationship with his daughters, the MB Marta is the absolute constant. He notes the motor starts on the first try, as it always did, no matter the weather.
The boat is dependable. It's a machine he's mastered, a loyalty he never had to question.
And that reliability contrasts so sharply with the betrayal and the unpredictability of human connection, which is really what the rest of the novel is about.
This brings us to the most profound external conflict in the novel, which is that collision between the entrenched traditional life, represented by Nils, and the forces of modernization.
And represented most vividly by the bridge.
The bridge, which is ironically described as a masterpiece of civilization. It was built by calculating engineers. Nils even admires it. He recognizes the human ingenuity required to suspend this piece of civilization hanging in midair.
And yet, this technological marvel is also the very instrument that rendered his entire life's work obsolete. It's a devastating paradox for him.
It is the moment of his professional invisibility. On the day the bridge opens, Nils is the one who ferries the prime minister and the journalists, the very people celebrating this future, yet they don't speak to him. They don't even look at him.
He's a historical relic to them.
Exactly. And the journalists don't even get his name right. They call him Nils Vik. He literally ceases to exist in the public record of the event that killed his job.
And that invisibility speaks to a broader cultural context, doesn't it? The invasion of the city people. This is an ongoing conflict in so much rural literature, the contrast between those who work the land and those who merely consume it as a spectacle.
You see that in the architecture. Nils notes the difference between the old sheltered houses that were built with knowledge of this part of the world and the new summer houses that stick their heads up and shout, "Here I am, over here, look at me."
They're performative.
Yeah.
They're not integrated.
I think the key interaction that captures this is the one with the estate agent, Ode Haver, and the photographer. They're essentially colonizing this space, treating the fjord as a recreation ground, a picturesque escape.
And Nils tries to explain to them that the fjord is a demanding, working landscape. He's not running a tourist cruise.
He uses that brilliant metaphor. You know, with the milk comes the cow, and with the cow comes the milk.
I love that line. It's so simple and so profound.
It is. If you want the beauty, the peace, the pristine landscape, you have to accept the muck, the drudgery, the smell of sheep manure in the boat, and the hard, repetitive labor.
But the city people only want the sanitized, picturesque postcard version the photographer is trying to capture. They want the milk without the presence of the cow.
And that realization that his entire life, the labor, the smells, the dedication, is being trivialized and packaged for a real estate transaction, is just devastating for him. It confirms his feeling that his existence is something disposable, something that has faded away like an old forgotten path.
And I think this conflict provides a deep philosophical justification for his final journey. By sailing one last time and picking up the ghosts of the working community, the farmer, the teacher, the midwife, he is asserting the meaning and the value of that drudgery.
He's proving that his quiet, loyal life created profound threads of connection.
Exactly. Connections that the engineers and the bridge and the city people can never fully erase because those connections were internal and spiritual, not economic.
So let's turn inward now to Nils himself. His final morning is this meticulous, almost desperate attempt to impose some kind of order on the chaos of his impending end. His movements are described as drilled, the efficiency of a man trying to manage the last fragments of his time.
The small details here are so intensely revealing about his psychology. He checks for bloodstains on the pillow, which is a little hint of the internal collapse or perhaps the violence he knows is coming.
He also omits aftershave, which is a small but really powerful break from his routine. It's almost an acknowledgement that scent is meaningless for the dead.
And the tremor in his right hand while he's shaving, forcing him to be slow and careful. It shows the physical betrayal he's grappling with, his own body failing him.
The Omega Watch is one of the most poignant symbols in the entire novel, I think. It was Marta's gift for their silver wedding anniversary, and it was previously unworn. He always said it was too nice for work.
And now, on his last day, he finally wears it. His act of winding it and setting the time, this final, uncertain attempt to sync his life with the physical measurement of time, is an act of deep intimacy with her and with his own mortality.
The watch, however, it ultimately represents the futility of trying to control time, doesn't it? It leads us right back to that idea of the sausage-shaped Earth.
It does. He winds the mechanical timepiece, trying to impose linearity on his last day, but as he sails, the boat starts to correct the distortion. The Omega Seamaster starts jumping forward and backward because the vessel is now traveling on emotional time, not on chronometrical time.
The boat dictates the timeline now.
The boat dictates the timeline, proving that the objective control Nils cherished for 70 years is completely irrelevant in the face of death.
And what about the monumental absurdity of his newspaper collection? All those massive bundles stacked in the cellar representing all those days, all those years, all the lost time stacked here.
It's an archive of the external world that he distributed but never fully participated in.
And Marta's critique is so practical, so Marta. She just says it's a fire hazard. She wants him to discard the weight of the past.
But Nils defends it simply. Such is life, Marta. He's defending the value of the archive, the proof that his life was lived in connection with the outside world, delivering the daily troops, the daily news.
The tragic absurdity, of course, is that even his final newspaper, the one from today, will remain unread. It will immediately descend into the status of archived history the moment he dies.
Which leads to the most profoundly symbolic ritual of the morning, the destruction of the mattress. It's not just clearing clutter, it is a deliberate act of cremation.
This is Nils asserting final control over the narrative of his marriage, isn't it?
It absolutely is. The mattress is the biological archive of his life with Marta. It's a repository of every hope, every joy, and every physical reality of their life together.
And the detail is so visceral, so necessary. It lists dark rings of blood, yellow blooms of urine, breast milk stains, and decades of semen and sweat, fragments of skin and hair and nails.
It makes their shared marital intimacy undeniable. It's not a romanticized version. It's the real, messy truth of a long life lived together.
So why burn it? Why not just throw it out? What is the significance of the fire?
He is destroying the physical witness. Nils believes it is too private to allow other people to deal with their past. This decision is absolutely crucial, especially when you consider the later revelations about Marta's desire for Robert South.
Ah, so he's erasing the physical possibility of external judgment.
Precisely. Judgment on the intimacy and the flaws of their life together. He controls the final narrative, ensuring that the physical evidence of their shared existence, the good and the bad, goes up in smoke and remains his memory alone, unsoiled by the scrutiny of others.
It's an act of profound loyalty, then.
Ironically executed through destruction, yes.
Let's talk about his identity. It seems to be constructed entirely around his work. I'm just a ferryman. It's a statement of pride, a limitation, and a definition all rolled into one. He is the man of the fjord.
And he connects that identity to a deep sense of tradition. He even reminds Marta that the Old Norse word ferj means fair or danger. His fatalism is inseparable from this profession. If you are a man of danger, you must accept the danger.
Which is the source of his famous refusal to learn to swim. Swimming only prolonged the suffering. He viewed it as an unnecessary struggle against fate.
It's one of the most revealing things about him. And Marta, in one of her most aggressive acts of love, literally has to physically beat him until he agrees to learn. She has to force him to fight for his life against his own fatalistic philosophy.
That fight against swimming is really a microcosm of his entire internal life, isn't it? He's always choosing quiet acceptance over active struggle.
It extends to his aversion to speech. He was the silent man until Marta taught him the crucial, vulnerable words, love and sweetheart.
And that silence, it creates the ultimate tragedy of his character. He's a man who observes and listens perfectly, but he rarely speaks his essential truth.
And that inability to articulate the important things persists right to the very end, with his daughter Eli, and most heartbreakingly with Marta after her stroke. He grows afraid of saying the wrong thing, and so he says nothing at all, allowing his silence to be misconstrued as indifference.
The conflict with his daughters, Eli and Guro, seems to stem from this cultural and generational divergence. Nils regrets that neither of the girls have children, despite dragging home one idiotic man after another.
He feels his life's continuity. The family line that Robert South photographed so beautifully is ending with him. He sees it as a failure.
But Marta, who is always more politically and socially fluid than Nils, She offers the counterpoint. She says they live different lives than the ones we lived.
And Nils struggles to accept that. He struggles to accept that different does not equal worse, only less familiar to him.
His final attempt at the fatherly instruction and reconciliation is that postcard he leaves. I have left this house, and I won't be coming back. Take good care of each other, Dad.
It's so minimal, so functional, it's perfectly suited to the silent man's communication style. He gives him a simple task of care, which is the one thing he felt he sometimes failed to provide himself.
But the most revealing scene for me is his unrequested visit to Eli in the city. Eli is living this messy, modern, self-determined life, renovating her apartment. And Nils, the man who is desperate to restore order, just takes over.
And lays her new floor perfectly. It takes him 5.5 hours.
It's a devastating act of parental control, disguised as an act of service. He is the ferryman who delivers people to their destination, but he cannot stop himself from trying to fix their lives once they get there. He's trying to impose his own obsessive order onto their chaos.
And the novel layers this critique so brilliantly by explicitly referencing Ibsen's The Master Builder, the play that Eli and her husband were going to see.
Which is about a man who achieves great professional success building literal buildings, but fails catastrophically at home, domestically.
It's Nils's exact tragedy. The ferryman who mastered the chaos of the fjord and saved lives in the avalanche is utterly ineffective when faced with the emotional demands of his wife, his daughters, and his brother.
So those 5.5 hours spent laying Eli's floor, it's a final, futile attempt to fix the domestic sphere he effectively abandoned for the reliability and safety of his boat.
Which brings us to the ghosts. The dead passengers arriving on the MB Marta. They aren't just narrative devices, they are fully realized short stories, and each one acts as a foil to Nils, forcing him to confront a different failure or success in his life.
We have to begin with the heart of the novel, Marta.
Marta is the disruptive catalyst from the very beginning. Their meeting is defined by her incredible agency. The flat tire, her direct sexual proposition, shall I suck you off, and her ultimate rejection of tradition with the black wedding dress.
She forced the connection. She set the terms.
She introduced chaos into Nils's ordered life. While he was out ferrying, she was having her political awakening, gathering younger intellectuals downstairs, sporting her FNL badge, advocating against the Vietnam War.
And Nils felt completely alienated by this sea down there, mystical and alluring, a world he didn't understand and didn't feel equipped to enter.
The May Day parade conflict is critical here. Marta involves their daughters in the anti-war march, which results in Nils being fired by the priest and the mayor.
Yet, despite his innate aversion to conflict and disruption, Nils proudly defends her actions after he's fired. It's a key moment.
It shows the core of his loyalty. He may not understand or agree with her political choices, but he will always be loyal to her and her agency.
The ultimate tragedy, though, is the aftermath of her stroke. Her communication via the trembling handwriting in the notebook is this physical representation of her lost voice. But her demands for agency remain so strong.
I want to be cremated. You can keep me in the ashtray. She refuses to become a parcel, a passive object to be cared for.
And this leads to her final, most crushing accusation in that notebook. You're only loyal to your boat.
That just cuts directly to the core of Nils's flaw. His prioritization of the safe, predictable routine of his work over the unpredictable, messy warmth of his wife.
He writes back, I love you. That is who I am. But Marta's final observation remains. His identity was inextricably linked to the machine, and she felt relegated to second place.
Then there's Robert Soth, the American photographer. He is, in some ways, the novel's antagonist, yet he's also Nils's best friend.
Nils says, you don't ever get two friends like this. You get only one such friend in a lifetime. Robert represents the life of desire and consequence that Nils actively avoided.
And Robert's backstory is crucial. His experience in the Vietnam War, the girl dying in his arms, being thrown onto the body cart, it left him deeply traumatized. He decided to photograph only middle-of-the-road subjects after that.
His philosophy, memory was rebellion, is such a stark contrast with Nils's desire to archive the past safely in the logbooks and the cellar. Robert believes memory must actively disrupt the present.
And the core conflict between them is the unacted affair, the desire for Marta. Robert confesses to loving Marta and leaving before anything could happen, and he frames his departure as this great noble act of saving the family.
Nils's rage is so pure and immediate. Oh, shut your mouth, Bob. She was my wife. Mine. He completely rejects the idea that Robert's restraint was heroic.
And then Robert counters with his cynical philosophy. He says, it's unhappiness that drives people. Nils the tragedies of life. What's happiness good for? What about desire?
He's suggesting Nils's happiness was just a passive loyalty, a kind of arrested development that refused to acknowledge the messy, powerful force of desire.
And the evidence Nils found, those photographs of Marta in her underskirt and bra smoking a cigarette, they revealed a different Marta, a person he didn't fully know or possess.
The physical self-harm that followed that discovery, slamming his body against things, feeling no pain, it shows that the emotional wound was so absolute it just transcended physical sensation. Robert, his best friend, revealed the biggest emotional storm Nils had to weather, and Nils met it with violence against himself.
And then, as a complete contrast to all that passion and desire, we have Jens Hag, the lonely farmer.
He serves as such a necessary contrast. He represents the almost mathematical need for partnership. Jens seeks a wife through a newspaper clipping. Farmer 44 seeks company. Purpose, marriage.
His philosophy is so practical. One was one too few. In order to survive, you had to be at least two.
And Nils, the seemingly happily married man, becomes his relationship coach at the Bogan Cafe. He advises Jens, everyone needs to be seen. There isn't a single person on this earth who isn't longing to be discovered.
Which is so ironic because Nils struggles to apply that same insight to his own daughters or his dying wife.
But Jens Hag's quiet wisdom is profound, and it really challenges Nils's assumptions about his own privilege. He says, no man with love in his life can understand how hard it is to be without it. And no happy person can truly grasp just how unhappy another might be.
That forces Nils to confront the profound stability of his life with Marta despite all its flaws, and to realize how much he took that foundation for granted.
The joy of Yen's subplot is that it's a success story. The arrival is Caitlin Keegan, who looks him straight in the eye. It's a calculated necessity that blossoms into a genuine connection.
And the paradox of Jens's peaceful death face down in the dirt, having achieved his life's fortification, it confirms his internal peace. He achieved a quiet, fulfilling resolution, believing, I did the very best I could. He succeeded where others failed.
Then we have this subplot involving Kariaga, the midwife, and Ingrid Alstadsater, the teacher. This is one of the most heartbreaking depictions of unrequited love and the tragedy of proximity I think I've ever read.
It's devastating. Kari was Nils's professional confidant. We see their cigarette and cognac ritual after each successful birth. This established Nils as the reliable hero, culminating in the rescue of the blue, still baby girl in 1975.
But her final winter reveals a different, private heroism. She asks Nils to only leave groceries for her in the boathouse. She says, I want to die alone.
And her symbolic burning of all her belongings, the furniture, the photos, the tapestries on the coastal rock, is her way of ensuring absolute finality. She's making a fall in one's own life absolute and unrecoverable by the living.
And this leads us to Ingrid Alstadsater. Ingrid is defined by her bitterness. She believes only mediocre people are happy. Her mission was to provoke students out of the stagnation of the fjord, but her professional fervor masked this devastating private history.
And the reveal is just stunning. Ingrid moved there for Kari.
But, as Ingrid says, nothing happened. Kari married someone else 3 years later.
And so Ingrid lived her entire life in crushing proximity to the woman she loved, resulting in this spiritual desiccation. She notes that a woman gets dehydrated if she spends her life alone. It's such a painful physical image for loneliness.
This is a devastating counterpoint to Nils and Marta's marriage. Nils was loyal, but Ingrid was devoted, and that devotion yielded only loneliness.
And Nils, the man who prided himself on reading the fjord and the people on his boat, realizes he missed this entire decades-long devastating story unfolding right beside him. It proves that his observational skills were only effective on the surface level.
Finally, there's Ivar, the burden of brotherhood, Nils's younger brother.
They were always defined by this push-pull dynamic, like magnets with the same polarity. They approached each other, pushed against each other, and were then flung apart again.
The betrayal was so small, but it was absolute for Nils. Ivar getting drunk during a Christmas visit after promising just one drink.
And Nils, who craves order and reliability above all else, just severs the relationship. He tells Marta to screen his calls. He decides he couldn't think about his brother anymore.
The final, harrowing memory is visiting Ivar's apartment after the suicide. The cat shot, Ivar on the sofa, his right eye dissolving. The guilt is just absolute.
And Nils desperately tries, now that Ivar is a ghost on his boat, to hear what Ivar is actually saying, the crucial words he refused to listen to when Ivar was alive.
Ivar, even in death, reminds Nils that his life was not as perfect as he pretended. Ivar shared Nils's deep connection to solitude. He says, I've spent the best times of my life here in the car, alone, when I can just be and flow.
They shared that same sentiment about the peace of being alone on the boat. They were far more similar than either of them dared to admit, but Nils' rigidity and his fear of disruption prevented the connection that might have saved his brother.
The structure of all this is so brilliant because it uses the fixed route of the ferry as the scaffolding for a completely non-linear journey. He sails his scheduled routes for the very last time, but the order of the stops is dictated entirely by emotional weight and memory, not by geography or chronology.
This is where we return to the Irish philosopher's idea of the illusory distance between forwards and backwards. The rules of time have completely broken down on the MB Marta. John Anderson from 1971 is picked up moments before Jens Haug from 1966.
The journey itself is a hallucination, just as the philosopher suggested.
And the boat actively participates in this distortion. The mechanical world begins to reflect the emotional reality. The diesel needle on the gauge, which should be dropping, actually goes up. The Omega Seamaster watch jumps forward and backward.
The boat becomes a metaphysical vessel sailing through the history of the fjord.
And this device is key to the seamless integration of all these subplots. Because time is no longer a constraint, each passenger's story, John's rebellion, Cardi's death, Gens's loneliness, can be a fully realized short story that momentarily takes over the narrative. It provides maximum depth without being a distraction because every single ghost directly reflects on Nils' personal identity or his failures.
The pacing of the novel is a very deliberate, slow decline, which perfectly mirrors the process of dying. It begins slowly and it ends slowly. The narrative resists the urge for action, forcing the reader into the meditative, almost claustrophobic internal space of a dying man.
But the narrative does contain moments of intense external chaos, primarily to establish Nils' character in the face of physical danger. The most dramatic memory is the avalanche of 1973.
150,000 tons of snow, houses floating like Monopoly pieces.
This scene is vital because it establishes Nils as an undeniable hero in the face of physical chaos. He rescued Olina and Malvin Toft, who were just sitting exposed in their bedroom, like looking into a doll's house.
The contrast is so palpable. Nils is perfectly suited to the fjord storms. He is decisive, reliable, and heroic when he's facing external physical chaos.
Yet he is mute, paralyzed, and completely ineffective in the face of emotional chaos. His brother's suicide, his wife's illness, his daughter's unhappiness. The pacing structure highlights that his life was defined by this external competence and a profound internal failure.
The final phase of the journey involves the transition from the protected inner fjord out to the outer territories, Fjord, Svarskir, Prose. The physical landscape opens up, which leads, paradoxically, to his total isolation.
And the signs of his dissolution multiply. The radio dies. This is arguably more devastating for him than the bridge was, because the radio was Nils' last mooring to the rest of the world, his connection to the continuous, objective present.
The resulting stillness is the cosmos, the great emptiness which cannot be fought. He is moving past the boundaries of the human world he served for so long.
And his physical dissolution follows. The description is harrowing. His legs grow ever thinner, seem ever further from himself. He is turning to water, to the raw elements that defined him, preparing to merge with the environment that has been his life partner for 70 years.
He is becoming one with the fjord.
He is. Which brings us to the philosophical core of the book. The central tension is this struggle between the desperate need to remember and honor his life and the absolute certainty of oblivion. Nils has to trace what he has loved in life.
But the fjord itself is oblivion. Nils understands that after the storm, after the accident, after the wreck, there's no evidence. The water erases everything, which makes the written record vital, but also completely insufficient.
And this leads to the fundamental question of the reliability of his memory. Nils's meticulous logbooks, which were meant to record objective truth weather, visibility, they actually obscured the emotional truth.
He wrote, for instance, of the day Guro left home. Good visibility. Fair. Southwesterly.
He recorded the objective conditions perfectly, but omitted the monumental emotional event of his daughter leaving. The logbook failed to contain his life. The ghosts are required to fill in all the gaps.
And even the ghosts are unreliable, which Luna, of course, points out. She only remembers walking in the forest because, as she says, all dogs like being in the forest, no matter whether we've been there or not.
Memory is often projection. It's what we want to have happen or what we believe should have happened. Nils' entire final day is an active acknowledgement that the simple facts of his life are meaningless without the subjective, emotionally heavy interpretations provided by the dead.
The archive he spent his life curating failed him.
And the hallucinations of his conscience succeed.
The novel also seems to systematically present three distinct models of love, which allows the reader to judge Nils's own flawed marriage against alternatives.
It does. First, you have Nils and Marta, the two clapping hands built on relentless loyalty, routine, and mutual dependency, but vulnerable to silent deviation and professional jealousy.
Second, you have Jens Haug and Caitlin. Love is a calculated necessity, a transactional relationship sought to achieve fortification against loneliness, which unexpectedly blossoms into genuine connection and happiness.
Which proves that love can, in a way, be manufactured from intention.
And third, the tragedy of Ingrid and Kari, unrequited, silent devotion. Lifelong proximity that resulted only in desiccation and crushing loneliness because neither party ever articulated their desire. It is the ultimate warning against the silent man's way of life.
And this brings us right back to Robert Soth's problem of wanting. Robert believes desire and unhappiness are the true drivers of people, which contrasts with Nils' defense of his own life. I was happy, I just continued to do what my family had always done.
So Nils is defending a life based on loyalty, presence, and repetition against a life based on desire and absence. And the novel, through the confluence of all those voices at the end, it ultimately sides with Nils, doesn't it?
I believe so. It confirms that sustained, quiet loyalty, the man who simply shows up day after day, is profoundly meaningful, even if it lacks the dramatic intensity of desire.
It's impossible to analyze Grytten without placing him in his context. He is clearly in dialogue with a rich Scandinavian and international literary lineage. He cites influences like B.S. Johnson, Claire Keegan, John McGahern, Dag Solstad, and John Fosse.
You definitely sense the melancholy existential literature of the North, the deep interiority and the spare, focused language. It really echoes Fosse's minimalist internal monologues.
But that is beautifully combined with the profound, empathetic observation of quiet, rural life that you find in writers like Claire Keegan and John McGahern. It's that deep, almost tactile sense of place.
It's the meeting of the cosmic existential crisis with the specific domestic detail.
And this synthesis is perfectly captured in the novel's core philosophy, which is articulated by Karyaga, the midwife. She says, this life is like an item of clothing. The beauty exists on the outside, but the warmth is found within.
That sentiment serves as the novel's entire thesis. The outside is the sparse prose, the routine, the boat, the cold fjord, the job description. The warmth is the love, the quiet acts of heroism, the loyalty, and the relationships that sustained him, even the flawed ones.
Nils's final day is the process of turning his life's garment inside out to find that warmth.
Which brings us to the resolution. It is an overwhelming, auditory triumph. Nils's final, desperate act is singing a hymn, a simple demand for connection. Bring them in from the shadows, gather everyone, drive them down from the fields, bring me a boat.
And the mechanical world, which had failed him with the bridge and the dying radio, finally complied with his spiritual need. The radio crackles back to life, broadcasting this torrent of voices that confirm Nils's existence and his impact, and they often contradict his own passive self-assessment.
These memorable testimonials are the novel's final emotional payload. Robert South, the man of desire, offers the ultimate validation of Nils's marriage. He says, he loved his wife. I always said they lived like two clapping hands. She was the left hand, he the right.
This confirms that despite the desire, the loyalty was the foundation.
But the defining phrase is provided by the teacher, Ingrid Alstadsader. She offers the definitive reevaluation of his life. He was an ineffectual man, and I mean that in the best possible sense. An ineffectual man is a man who makes time for people.
That reframes his entire existence. His quiet life, which Nils himself previously viewed as passive or obsolete, is redefined as fundamentally generous.
His inability to articulate his feelings or fight for himself was balanced by his steadfast, reliable presence for others. He wasn't doing things to change the world, he was being there for the people crossing his path.
And the final piece of evidence, the quiet confirmation from his own family, comes from his daughter, Nils Vik. She knocks on the coffin with his wedding ring, as if to say, we'll speak soon, sweetheart.
It confirms that his loyalty and his silent love were understood, even if they were rarely spoken.
The ultimate reunion is earned precisely because it honors Marta's agency. She returns, she approaches him from behind, puts her hands over his eyes, and speaks the words he waited a lifetime to hear. I'm waiting for you, sweetheart.
And when Nils asks the eternal illogical question of how she arrived, her answer is perfectly Marta.
I cycled, of course.
It asserts her independence, her spirit, and her agency, even in the afterlife. It ties right back to their beginning when she claimed to have cycled across the entire fjord just to find him.
The very last sentence achieves the final synthesis of all the novel's conflicts: birth and death, movement and stillness.
The beginning must have looked like this, a darkness and a light. The darkness with this light in it, like when a boat crosses the black fjord with a lit lantern at the prow. He is crossing the final threshold, and Marta, the light, is guiding him home, completing the metaphor of the ferryman's journey.
It's just an incredible literary achievement that forces us to reevaluate what makes a life meaningful. Nils Vik's existence wasn't spectacular in the conventional sense, but his profound loyalty and his quiet acts of kindness created a lasting imprint that's confirmed by this beautiful, messy chorus of the dead.
The novel's real function, just like Nils's boat, is to create this holding space, a temporary waiting room in time, where we can actually pause, review our past, forgive our flaws, and ultimately appreciate that essential warmth that's hidden within the clothing of life.
So we circle back to the philosophical framing that structured this entire dive. If, as the Irish philosopher suggested, the distance between forwards and backwards is truly illusory and the Earth is sausage-shaped, does that mean that every choice we ever made, every connection, good and bad, already exists simultaneously?
And does the act of living then become merely the ongoing, necessary act of remembering?
It invites you, the learner, to reflect deeply on your own final inventory. And what truth would be revealed if your dead passengers came aboard today? A stunning and essential read, The Ferryman and His Wife by Frode Grytten.